This is Nairi Watson. I am a sophomore majoring in elementary education and special education. I attend Chaney University of Pennsylvania. I am interviewing Dr. Gaffin on May 3rd, 2016 at the Leslie Pinckney Hill Library in Chaney, Pennsylvania. This interview is being recorded as part of the Inclusive Future Faculty Initiative sponsored by the Frederick Douglass Institution, collaborative of Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education. The interview is being recorded on a Nikon Coolpix video camera. What is your full name?
My name is Virgilette Nzinga Gaffin.
What is your department rank and at what university are you currently employed?
I'm at Chaney University also, and I'm in Social Behavior Studies. That's the name of the department, and I teach Africana Studies.
How long have you worked at the university?
I came to Chaney in 2003 as an adjunct, and then in 2006 I moved on to a tenure-track position, and I've been in that area since.
How long have you been employed as a professor?
Since the beginning, but I did start out, beginning being 2003, I did start out in Social Behavior Studies as an adjunct, and I taught African American history. And then I moved to the English department on tenure track, and I taught there until 2 years ago, and I've gone back to Social Behavior Studies in order to start the Black Studies department.
What made you decide to go to a graduate school to pursue a terminal degree?
Well, teaching, I have to say, is my second career. Originally, I was in corporate America, and I went to school at night, and I did all my education at night. So I started out as a business major and an English minor, and at some point, they permitted double majors, so I became a business English major, and then I finished all my English credits first, loved literature, and that's what made me move on to graduate school, I was at Rutgers Camden, and they didn't have a graduate degree in English initially. While I was there, they started a graduate degree in English, and I moved right into that.
Okay. How would you describe your graduate school experience?
Well, again, it was at night, so it took forever. But at some point in matriculating in English, I got introduced to African literature, and that made me go from Rutgers Camden to Temple University in Philadelphia because they had an African American Studies department. And I took a few courses in African Lit and African American Lit. And then I took a course in Du Bois, and I just fell in love with Black Studies. So I moved from a master's degree in English to a master's degree in African American Studies, and I went on to get my PhD there.
At what point did you decide to become a professor?
Well, I had wanted to teach for as long as I can remember, but I could not figure out what I wanted to teach. Where I had a deep appreciation for literature and was exposed only to American and European literature at Rutgers, it was literally stumbling on African literature that made me realize that I wanted to teach African literature, and then later on I realized that I wanted to teach it to people of African descent, which is what led me to the first historically black institution of higher education, Chaney University.
So why did you choose to become a professor?
Because I love learning. I had a mentor at Rutgers and a mentor at Temple that just made it look like teaching was the best profession on the planet, and I decided to follow in their footsteps. My goal was always to teach, but it was when I moved to Black Studies that I realized it was Black Studies that I wanted to teach.
What are your responsibilities as a faculty member?
That sort of changes with I was going to say the day of the week, but it might be a minute. With less and less resources available, our responsibilities, let me say it this way. Observing my two mentors that I mentioned earlier teaching, I thought that the professor's main job was to teach and to prepare for teaching and to spend the summer doing research to teach. It wasn't until I started working that I found out about the 9,000 committee members and being an advisor and all those kind of things, which I really hadn't thought about. but that actually enriches the experience. And I say it all the time, I wouldn't change what I'm doing. I love being in the classroom. I love the experience of watching the light bulb go off and the challenge to get the light bulb to go off in other students.
What is the day in the life of a professor like?
The one thing that's good is I don't think there's any 2 days that are the same. If it's a day when you're teaching all day, in fact, this semester is unusual. I have 3 back-to-back classes on 2 days of the week, which means I don't get a glass of water after 11:30 until after 4:30 on Tuesday and Thursday. However, we are taking this interview the day after the last day of class, so I don't have to deal with that again. But, there are days when you teach for 3 hour and 15-minute classes back to back. There are days when I come in and teach a 4 o'clock class, and I have office hours that day. There are days when I teach, I go to a meeting, I come back and teach, I go to a meeting. There's not a dull moment at any time.
What would you describe as some of the benefits of being a professor?
Well, the things that brought me here originally was love of learning. And I also love the idea, I would much prefer giving students a research paper to write than an exam, because they may write on a topic that I think I know something or everything about, and nobody knows everything. But they'll come up with a different perspective simply because their experiences are different than mine. So I always talk about the student who wrote the paper, this was last year, about the attorneys who were responsible for Brown versus Board of Education, and that all of them had gone to historically black colleges. It's something I'd never actually thought about, but if you look about the timing of it, and I'm sure other people had thought about it, it was just not something I spent any time with. It was a very good idea, it was a very good paper, and it made people stop and think about a lot of things. Would we have had Brown versus Board of Education had there not been HBCUs for those young black men to attend?
So why do you think that there are so many misconceptions surrounding the professorate?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what they mean by misconceptions, other than the fact that I thought it was a lot less physical work than it actually is. I think that's the only misconception that I would have, that there was so much more than just the act of teaching. And I'm not talking about correcting papers or having office hours. It's the different committees and things. But other than that, because I was mentored by 2 great individuals, I didn't come in with any misconceptions. Other than, I'll say this, I had heard that students graduate from high school and come into college and they're not really prepared until you actually see that. Because I was blessed with having a good education, so I didn't come from high school and start college with some of the needs that I run into on a daily basis. But other than that, I think I was mentored to the point where I wasn't really shocked about anything or had any misconceptions.
Okay. Do you think it's important for more underrepresented minorities to become professors? Why or why not?
Well, I think it's important for underrepresented people to get to the point where we're not underrepresented. So at my first university, there were very few black students, and you could count the African American professors on one hand. When I went to school in Philadelphia, it was a little different, but you still see a tremendous lack of people of African descent in professor situations. And now that the world has gotten to the point where they're I don't even know what the odds are, but probably 5 or 6 adjuncts to a tenured professor. People can't support their families on that, so that's going to turn people away from the professorate who might have been thinking about it in the first place.
Is there anything I did not ask that you would like to add?
Well, I think it's important that this project is being done. I think it's a very good idea. I hope that it's used in a fashion that will bring awareness to underrepresented student groups that there are opportunities for teaching at the university level. That's different from teaching K through 12, and that there are benefits. Right now, I think there are a lot of areas that are strapped for money. Education is one of them, and because I'm in education, of course, that's foremost in my mind. But that same issue spans the globe in terms of areas for presentation. I think we need to increase black participation in all levels of education, K through 12, the professor, STEM students, business students. All of us need to know more about teaching.
Well, thank you for your wonderful answers and your time, and this concludes the interview.
Oh, thank you.